Passion, purpose, possibilities. They're all right there. But sometimes we need a little push. And that's where SheSez comes in. Think of it as a master class taught by the world's most interesting women, sharing stories and ideas, because girlfriends help each other. This is SheSez with Linda Grasso. Hello and welcome to SheSez. Kimberly Inskeep may have been voted best dressed by her high school senior class, but she never would have guessed that she'd end up running a $250 million fashion business. Kimberly is co-founder and president of Cabi, a women's clothing line sold not in stores, but through pop-up events at homes. Today, Cabi has 3,500 saleswomen, known as stylists, across the United States. Kimberly, thanks for joining us.
Oh, this is a pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
I want to hear how you came up with this idea. Now, take us back to, what was it, like 2001, 2000, right around then? You had a job. You were working as a management consultant.
I was traveling all over the world, and I got to go places and see things that I never dreamed I would ever as a kid growing up. And so it was a wonderful career, but I didn't get to see my little one take her first steps, and I didn't get to hear those first words. And I just remember thinking, this really stinks, because I loved working and I loved all that the career allowed me to be and do, but I didn't like that pull. It was really painful.
And I'm sensing that you were also feeling, and I read that you were feeling like you wanted to do something. You didn't want to pull out totally.
Right.
And you were thinking about something entrepreneurial, but you weren't quite able to put your finger on it.
Exactly. And so about that time, I met Carol Anderson and her husband, Jan Janura. And long story short, we became fast friends, and we were out to dinner one night, and they were sharing just their frustration with Carol's experience in the brick and mortar, because they had really pigeonholed her. And every season that she would go to design beautiful things, they would go back to the same old. And she just said, I want a different form of distribution. And so her husband, who was a real idea man, is a real idea man. He said, do you think women would ever buy direct? Well, this was about the time that I was really looking for a change. And I said, I don't know, but I'd be willing to look into this. And so I went to their warehouse, and I chose 3,000 garments that were leftover garments, and I packed them up in a truck, and I took them to our garage. My husband racked the garage, and I hung all these garments, and then I would I'd merchandise some of them. I'd pull them into the house, and I would just invite groups of women over just to see what they would do, and if they would even be willing to try on clothes and buy clothes this way. And I couldn't believe it. Women would walk in after a long day. They would hang with one another. They'd be talking, having a glass of wine. I'd find them in the bedrooms, just sprawled out with clothes all over the place, having fun. And I remember one woman saying, oh my gosh, if I could shop this way, I would never go to the mall again. And that was 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago. And I remember going, okay, we're onto something here. So I packed up other boxes of clothes, and I sent them to friends of mine around the country, told them what I did. I said, do the same thing, just test this, because I didn't know if it was a California thing or what. So, I went across the whole country, about 4 or 5 different friends, and they did the same thing, found the same thing. And I said, all right, we're ready to really test this now.
It's so interesting. I mean, you essentially embarked on a research project.
Yes.
And what were your husband's thoughts at this time? Because I'm assuming you'd been a management consultant for a while. You were probably making great money.
Yes.
You really didn't have, you had a love of fashion, which a lot of us do, but you didn't have any experience in it, selling and marketing. What were his thoughts when you shared with him, like, honey, here's what I'm thinking?
So it's so funny you asked that, because I remember one night, I remember this as clear as can be. We were sitting at the dinner table, and I was kind of wondering, why me? Because it was going well, and I was like, this actually is viable. And then I had that moment of self-doubt, and I remember looking at him and going, why me? And he looked at me and he said, why not you? And so that was just the words of encouragement that I needed just at that right moment. That was like, yeah, right. I'm smart, I'm hardworking, I'm innovative, I've got, people I know and friends. Why not? We can make this work.
So you and Carol get together, you sit down. Did you write out a business plan, the two of you?
Well, actually, Carol was busy running her other business because they didn't stop the other business. They kept it going while I did probably a year of due diligence and where I just started researching. And I found kind of through the research who we wanted to be and who we didn't want to be. And if I can go backwards, excuse me, just for a moment. In my life prior to Cabi, I had been a management consultant. And something that I learned during those years was that going into companies, you can bring great ideas, great insights, amazing tools. And if the leadership if they're not real visionaries, or if they don't have a growth mindset, or if they're not very relationally astute, nothing changes. And I remember being discouraged in that. So embarking on Cabi, I thought, oh my gosh, could we actually build something based on all these amazing leadership principles that I learned, based on values that I believe in, and really create something with those as some key tenets, and would it work?
It's so interesting because that's so integral to, from what I've read, the success of Cabi is that whole principle of, leaders and people who are like-minded and really believe in the product and are passionate about it. And I want to take a step back even further and say that, so many times when we women are thinking about starting something and it's new and it's different and we're going off on a new tangent, people will say, well, what you don't have that kind of background. You didn't go to school for that. Like you haven't done that. So often it's all these life experiences that we have that lead us down a path. You, for example, going down this path, look at what you brought from your management consulting experience.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a traditional trajectory to get from A to Z or even A to B.
No, absolutely. And I remember meeting, in my journey along the way, I met different people. And we all do. We meet people along the way who leave an impression on us. And for me, it was leaders. And I remember for some reason, people that could really bring out a sense of vision, not only their own, but help tap into your vision, your passion. I saw those as great leaders. And I was fortunate enough to have encountered those people along the way and would think, if I started something, if ever I had a company, that's the kind of leader I would hope to be. And then to also have an opportunity, because the best leaders build other leaders. And that's what this business is. It's a business of leaders creating leaders of their own companies, their own little businesses. And that's what's been so satisfying.
I totally get that you contributed this to the business and Carol contributed this. That said, picking the right business partner is so critical. And yes, you became fast friends. I know you had a lovely tea together and you enjoyed each other socially. And I think your husbands clicked as well. What were the other things? Or was it just that you knew that you could go to work with this person, that she could be your partner? Or was it just a gut and an intuition?
Oh, that's a great question. In all honesty, for me at first, it was the opportunity. It was, I liked these people very much, but what excited me is I could see the opportunity. And it was such a need at the time for women. I mean, we were 20 years ago, we were, I think, way ahead of our time, kind of tip of the curl, in that we were talking about doing a non-brick and mortar fashion experience long before all the stuff that we're hearing today, where we know retail is not, it's not very healthy right now. It's not a lot of places are trying to find their way and everybody's talking about creating experiences. Well, we did that 20 years ago. And when we began, back then, I remember thinking, this fills a need. And then not only the fashion experience, but the fact that, remember, in my career, I wasn't able to see my daughter. And I remember thinking that just wasn't fun to be torn like that. And if we could offer an opportunity for women to really call their own shots, and a company by women, for women, creating an environment where women could call their own shots, I thought, that is solving a problem.
Mhm. You know how I think I told you before that my sister-in-law was a cabi salesperson.
Uh-huh.
She stopped for a while, and now she's actually getting back into it. More samples for me. Sorry.
I love it.
That was my introduction to cabi. But what really got you on my radar was one day I was looking, I think it was Instagram. I was flipping through, and I saw this fantastic piece. It was maybe about a minute long. It might have been a little longer. And it was your stylists. And they were all talking about where they were in life. And that's what kind of got you on my radar, is because, as you know, SheSez is about women trying to craft their next chapter. Many have been stay-home moms, had big jobs, big educations, big degrees, but did what I consider the most important job in the world, and that is focus on the children. Or they've been doing it for 15 years and they want to focus more on the children, but yet they still want something for themselves. They still have that piece of themselves that wants to do something outside the home.
Yeah.
And it's so tough as a woman. And that's what the women in the ad were talking about, or whatever it was, a promotional piece, is they were talking about having this energy, wanting to feel complete, maybe being 35, 40, 45, and looking at maybe getting back into the corporate world and going backwards. That's really hard to do when you've been at home with the kids.
Well, it's interesting. When we started, the first thing that Carol and I did is we picked up the phone and we called up our friends around the country, many of whom were at that stage. Some of them were still kind of at the stage of either starting a family or raising a young family. But many of the women we called were at that stage. What I found, though, is, and it's representative by the first 10 women that joined us, who we call our founders, by the way. But these first 10 women, all a variety of backgrounds. Like we say, we all come from somewhere. Like some were just starting a family. Some had a corporate background. Some had never worked. Some were empty nesters. Some, I should say, never worked outside the home. As we know, there's a big distinction.
Oh, yeah, I tell you, the kind of stress when I was a stay-at-home mom experience would bring most top-level executives to their knees.
I couldn't agree more.
Crazy.
But so a real wide variety of experiences. And that has been true ever since, is that women come into this business from all different walks of life because they're all fulfilling different needs. And this solves, I always say business is about solving problems. And just like we solve the problem for a woman who wants a different way to shop, and she doesn't want to have to deal with the brick and mortar experience, we also provide a different way to work. And so some of our best stylists are women at home with little children. And you know how they always say, if you want to find somebody who can get something done, find a busy woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's true. It's like some of our best stylists are juggling, kids at home. Some of them actually even are carrying another job, and they're doing cabi and really using cabi either as a social vehicle or as a way to just satisfy their love of fashion, or as a way to build something so that they can move from that corporate.
Again, I think it's really about, keeping a piece of yourself for you. I don't mean to sound critical of motherhood in any way. As I said, I think it's the most important job in the world. I stayed home for 5 years with my kids during, those years. And I got to say that, sometimes you need something that is outside of that, and yet we feel guilty about it, or we feel like we shouldn't be wanting that. A lot of us have to have it because we want that ancillary income. It's very expensive raising children today and planning for college and all the things they need. I really love women who embrace it and are bold and say, I want this for myself, and I want to have it all, and I want to be my own boss, and I want to be a great mom.
Yeah. And I think that I always say to people, they sound contradictory to one another, but I believe in both of them. It's kind of both and. You can have your cake and eat it too, if you plan well. But you have to understand everything costs something. So, and I tell my daughter this even, it's like, know what it costs and then decide what you're willing to pay to get what you want. And that's what we, share with our stylists. It's like, we don't make a big deal about if somebody's a top salesperson or not. It's like, yes, we'll say congratulations, but we want a woman to come into this and do it for her reasons. And
whatever they are.
Whatever they are. Because if you're playing to your why, then you're going to not only be deeply satisfied, but you're going to stay with it. There's a big difference. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, the game theory about the finite game versus infinite game. Most businesses bring people in and they're playing to a finite game, meaning I know the rules and I'm defined by whether or not I win or lose. Game over. An infinite game is I know my why. And I play to that regardless of whether one day I feel like a loser and another day I feel like a winner, but I know my why. And it frustrates your competitors because your competitors are always looking at you and their competition. And you don't need to look at your competitors. You just need to keep your eyes on your why.
Yeah, and figure out your why. I mean, one of the things I've learned about interviewing all these fascinating women on SheSez, and so many times this comes up in the conversation, Kimberly, is take a beat, pause, and figure out your why. Because we're going through all these motions, and we've all got our little ancillary goals. You're trying to come up from PV here to battle traffic to get to see me, and I got to see you, and then I got to go grocery shopping. And, we're going through all these different things. And sometimes we need to really dial it back and think about our why, and we just don't do that enough.
No. And I think it also means asking, like, I always say 5 whys. Like when you're trying to discover your why, ask yourself why, and then whatever the answer is, ask why that. And then whatever the answer is, ask why, and go 5 times, and you will get to a much deeper, like, aha, oh, okay, I see what is motivating me.
Share with us some struggles, some hurdles that you got over. I know it couldn't have been all smooth sailing to get to that fabulous sales number I said at the beginning. Did you have bumps in the road, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, of course. Business is about bumps for sure. And
do you have the stomach for it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you have to.
Did you have to learn to have that?
I probably kind of was born with it.
Really?
Probably. I mean, I think I've probably always been a little gritty, like.
You don't seem very gritty to me. You seem very polished. Beautiful for anyone who's not able to see the video.
Oh, no. I mean like that true grit inside.
Yeah,
that you
I
just
gotcha.
say, come hell or high water.
I gotcha.
I am not going to be stopped. And
Yeah.
you do have to have a little bit of that in anything you do. You know that.
Yeah. I was saying to my son the other day, he's trying to figure out what he wants to do. And I said, I need you to look at whatever you're deciding on, even though you're only 20. What can you say this about? I'm not giving up.
Yes.
What can you say that about? You said that about cabi, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
So I interrupted you, but I do want to hear about what a challenge that you overcame.
Well, like I said, business is about solving problems. So there were a myriad of them. But I think along the way, probably the biggest challenge, and it's a recurring one, is our world changes so fast. Oh my gosh, Linda, it's like you blink and there's new technology, and you blink and people are moving, and everybody's so transient today, and life circumstances, and we are, our business very much responds to how women are feeling. We are a woman's business. And so whether or not they are buying, whether or not they want to be a stylist is very much driven by what's going on in the world around them. So, and that's been true for 20 years. So whether it's world events, national events, family events, personal events, I've always been, one of the biggest challenges for me is to try and communicate, because remember, we have almost 3,500 women, try and communicate to these women on as personal of a level as I possibly can that says, I see you, I see what you're up against, and I promise you, you'll get to the other side. Don't give up.
It's the most motivational thing you could say. I see you, I hear you.
Yeah. And that's really challenging. The larger you get, the harder, as a company, the harder it is. And so coming up with creative ways to try and really speak to these women. The other thing is, as I said, our world is changing. We are a technology-driven world now. We are technology-driven in everything we do. And so our business, which is about this, being in person, and we teach our women, like, connection isn't what you do on the phone. Connection is doing what you do, Linda. It's like the face-to-face time and being interested rather than trying to be interesting. Like what you do in terms of finding out people's stories, that's called intimacy. Now I've made an intimate connection. Now that woman is interested in what I do, why I do it, and will maybe be a client.
Which speaks to the whole cabi, philosophy of having the pop-up home events, because, that's where, women connect and share. And, it's about a lot more than fashion.
It is a lot more than fashion. But back to your question about challenges and the fact that we live in a world that's technology-driven, that's where we're being challenged. So we have to become super innovative and it's fun, but it's challenging. Find answers to help people use technology, not as a substitution for connection, but just as a way to serve somebody better.
Well, look, I see the cabi push out on Instagram. I'm a big Instagrammer. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of my girlfriends have built their businesses, not cabi, but other businesses around Instagram. And I see those women pushing them out. They're photographing themselves. They're photographing other women. They're photographing items. So, you're getting that crowd on board. Kimberly, share with me a little bit I'm familiar with the cabi fashions, but share with me a little bit about what they are, what the design sensibility is, the price point for anyone who is interested.
Sure. We designed to what we call kind of the 42-year-old muse. That's who we designed to, knowing that we will appeal to younger and to older. And then we design for all lifestyles, whether she is a career woman, whether or not she's mixing up career and staying at home, a socially active woman, an athletic woman. So we really are very intentional to design to all different lifestyles. And then ages, as I mentioned a moment ago, my daughter, who's 23, absolutely loves cabi, as a number of our stylist daughters will steal from their closets,
Look, fashion in some sense, in a lot of senses, is ageless.
It is.
I mean, I think Zara is for a young person. And I told you, I've gone there and bought $40 blouses that I've had more compliments on than blouses I've bought for, a lot more at Barney's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about putting them together. And
it is exactly that. And that's what our stylists help women do through when they show up at an event. They help them with their style and ideas to help them put it together. So it looks like, oh my gosh, how much did you spend on this? And it's not like you say, the Barney's spend. It's more of that mid-range spend. And our average price point is around $89. That's our average.
And you train these stylists at sort of meetings or conventions, a couple, 2 a year. You guys meet and you show them the line. I know because my sister-in-law told me.
Yeah.
And they show them how to put it all together and all the different, shout out to Chris Coons Veers.
I love it.
I know she's going to listen to this one. But she puts it all together, and even me, I'm really into fashion. And sometimes I think I I kind of know what's going on. And she'll be like, oh no, wear this with this. And she's really confident about it. And it's really cute.
Okay. So next summer, we're having one of our events in downtown Los Angeles. You have to come to our fashion show.
Oh, I'd love
to. It is unbelievable. It's a room full of 3,500 women just going crazy. And it's like the most fun fashion show you've probably ever been to. Beautiful, beautifully done. But we're all about just upbeat and fun. And,
and you're like the Tony Robbins of the event, I hear. You get up and people are like, Kimberly Inskeep, and they're all like screaming, no, no, no.
No. But I do love to inspire these women. I just think it's so important to speak to their minds and their hearts about things that really matter to them.
Kimberly, has your success surprised you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I think it should. I think we should wake up every morning with just this sense of awe and gratitude. I really do. I think we should never take anything for granted. It's so important to be in awe of who we are and what we have and what we've done.
Kimberly, what can our listeners learn from your story? What are the takeaways that you'd like to offer here for them?
Well, when I think about women and what we have, especially those of us here in the U.S., we have so much at our fingertips in terms of information, access to opportunity, and I would say, and I also think about our young women, your future daughter-in-laws and my daughter, and I think about, what are they becoming? And I think that there are 3 or 4 things that I say to our stylists in one way or another, but I would say to any woman who's thinking about venturing into something, who wants to pursue her passion. I would say, number 1, the word discipline is so important. I grew up with a dad that said discipline, your decision to be disciplined is probably the most important decision you'll ever make because it gives you access to everything else you want to do. So just that decision that you wake up in the morning, you say, I am going to be disciplined. In other words, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do and follow through. And the other thing is, and this is part of, I think, being a learner, is I keep a journal. I write down everybody I meet. I try and remember all the facts I can about them. I write down what I learned from them. I write down quotes that I've heard that I like or something I read in an article that just kind of was like an aha. I write down the events of the day that were not necessarily positive and that I learned from, or the events of the day that were fabulous. And then on the weekends, I'll read through. And it's amazing the themes that come out. And you'll find that. And those will guide you in your decisions of whatever you're venturing to do. And then the other thing, and I guess this is part of discipline, but maybe not, it's that true grit. Like, what did you say you said to your son?
I said, look, in deciding what pursuit what direction you're going to go in, what can you say this about? I am not giving up.
Yes. That do not give up. What Winston Churchill said, never, 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 never give up. That is the truth.
Yeah.
That is the truth. And then relationships. And relationships cannot be forged through social media. Relationships are forged through what you do. It's that sitting down and talking with someone and asking them questions, getting to know them. What do they care about? What concerns them? And that's, I think, that kind of intimate connection is what makes the world go round. And you do that, and you will have a business that people want to be loyal to because they'll know you care.
Kimberly Inskeep, I have so enjoyed chatting with you. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, gosh, this has been a delight for me, too. So thank you for asking me. Thank you so much.
Now that we're going to go off the air, let's talk about what's in for fall.
All right. I'll share all the secrets with you.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us. If you like what you hear, hit subscribe. New episodes of SheSez will automatically be downloaded. And quite frankly, when you're a subscriber, it's a lot easier to listen while you're driving the car or walking the dog. You can tap your podcast app and simply hit play. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, write a review. It takes a minute and will help us stay alive. Just tap where it says see more episodes. Scroll down to the very bottom and you'll see where you can fill in the stars. We'd love 5, of course, and write a review. don't forget to press send. Thanks again, and we'll see you with a new episode next Tuesday.